Well, we know this is going to be a controversial video, but we need to talk. Hey everybody, welcome back to Living Traditions Homestead. This is Kevin and Sarah. Well, the gardening season is starting up, and we have had to make a very tough decision here on the homestead. And we wanted to talk to you guys about it today and tell you kind of what our plans are and how we came to the decision that we have made. So let's start back a little bit when we still had our homestead in the Phoenix area in Arizona. We love back to Eden gardening. When the resources are available and you can do it correctly, it is a very effective way to garden. And for us, it worked really well on our urban homestead in the Phoenix area. We had a tree company who was willing to deliver pretty much as much free mulch as we could get. They just dump it right near our garden, and we were able to spread it as often as we wanted. And really, there were times when we had way too much of it. And again, it worked really, really well.
Our intention after we moved to the Missouri Ozarks was to replicate that system, the Back to Eden garden system, for all of our garden here in our rural homestead. We found out very quickly that that would not be possible here. We
tried to find some local tree companies who were willing to bring things out to us, you know, pretty far out of town, out of the way, and we were not able to find any tree companies that were willing to do that. We actually have a neighbor who works for the highway department, Missouri Department of Transportation, and they do a lot of tree trimming, but unfortunately they burn most of what they cut down. They don't shred it, they don't mulch it, so that wasn't an option either. So we quickly realized that you know, getting those free resources brought to us just wasn't going to happen on our current homestead. So we decided last year, which was our first year of gardening here in Missouri, that we were going to try kind of a hybrid version of Back to Eden gardening, and we were pretty certain that it would work really well.
Absolutely. And what we ended up doing, we were able to get a bunch of cardboard from a local company, and we spread that cardboard over the entire area of our in-ground garden, and then we covered it with about 4 inches, packed down 4 inches of straw.
Right, and we actually layered it. We actually layered about 2 inches of straw, and then a good layer of composted manure, and then another layer of straw on top. So again, yeah, it was about 4 inches at least packed down. I mean, not loose on top, but packed down on top of the cardboard. And we really thought that that would, you know, clear this area for us, and, you know, kind of work the way that Back to Eden had for us in Arizona.
Right, our hopes were that the system we implemented last year would mimic all of the good things about Back to Eden gardening. It would shade the soil, so keep it cooler. It would hold in the moisture. It would break down the straw and help, you know, fertilize the soil along with the manure.
So after we put down the straw in the spring, it looked beautiful. We were so happy with it, but it didn't last for long. The straw started to break down very quickly. The weeds here in Missouri are very invasive, and they quickly started to come up. Basically, as soon as the cardboard had disintegrated under the straw, the weeds started to come up right through the straw. In fact, some of the weeds, I think, were in the straw and just came along with the straw. And so by, you know, not even halfway through the summer, we were doing as much or more weeding in the garden than we would have had we, you know, tilled it up at the beginning of the season and started with a blank slate that way.
Besides the weeds, one major issue that I encountered throughout the entire summer, but came real quickly, I noticed it in the spring, is that you know, the ticks were really attracted to the straw. I would be kneeling down planting or weeding or even through the summer harvesting, and I'm not even kidding you, every single time ticks would just start crawling out of the straw and up onto my clothes and up my pant leg and that kind of thing, and so that it just totally freaked me out.
Right, yeah, we already have a lot of ticks here in this area. I mean, you can't go into the woods in the summer without coming out with ticks on you, but for the most part they stay back in the woods, but it seemed like the straw in the garden just really attracted them, even closer to, you know, to our normal living area, which isn't something we need to be attracting. You know, there's a lot of diseases that the ticks can carry.
Right, it was bad.
Another problem with using the straw was really just the cost. We bought big bales of straw from our local hay place that we buy stuff from, and they were about $75 a bale, and that was for a 4 foot by 8 foot bale. I think it was 4 by 4 by 8, and I mean that we needed 2.5 of those to cover the garden one time. So that was, you know, $225 worth of straw to cover one time, and it didn't even last one season. So that makes some pretty expensive tomatoes, and we just can't afford to do that every single year.
So I want to show you really how very little of this straw is left. Now, I want to remind you that we had straw 4 inches thick, and not like loosely 4 inches thick, like really packed down 4 inches thick. And you can see here that, you know, there's barely even ½ an inch until you get to the dirt. And in some places, there's none at all. You know, best case scenario, we have an inch. But as you can see, you know, as far as weed barrier goes, this is not working at all. And so just to get this back into working order, it would take a ton of work. We've got weeds everywhere, and they're not just the kind of weeds that you can just dig up with a shovel. We're talking a lot of weeds. Now, last fall, before it got cold, we went through this garden and we picked all the weeds. Missouri's winter is really mild in comparison to a lot of the other part of the country, so a lot of these things go dormant and sometimes continue to grow. So early on in planting season now, you know, we've got gigantic weeds and a huge weed problem.
Now, another thing that I'd like to address is that you've probably heard us say in the past on some of our videos that the small town near us has a free pile of wood chips in town that you can go get anytime you want, and that you can use, you know, for mulch and walkways and things like that. So I wanted to address why we're not using those to create a Back to Eden garden. There's several reasons why we've decided not to use those. And the first and foremost is that they're really just not the right type of wood chip to be using in our garden. And why do I say that? Well, it's because they're first of all, they're big chunks of wood. They actually, a lot of them come from a local factory where they grind up old pallets and then put those in that pile. So it's not the trees and leaves. If you watch the Back to Eden documentary, he talks about needing to have the brown material and the green material shredded together to create the right combination. And the wood chips that we can get free in town just are not that. On top of that, we've been told that a good percentage of the actual tree material that's in there is black walnut, which, as you know, a lot of things just will not grow around black walnut.
Right, they're a natural herbicide. The last main reason about using that mulch pile in town is there's no service that will deliver it out to us. So we would need to go there and get all the chips that we would need. We do have a small trailer that we can hook up to our SUV, and we calculated how many trips into town we would need to take in order to give an adequate amount of mulch to this garden. It would take us 64 trips into town in order to get enough wood chips for 1 year of using it.
Right.
And you know, basically each trip for us would take a minimum of an hour and a half.
Right.
So that's a lot of gas, it's a lot of time, and you know, hand shoveling, it's a lot of work.
Right. Yeah, it really just doesn't make sense. And then on top of that, I mean, we could spend all of that time and effort and then realize that it's mostly black walnut and we're poisoning our land, and then we're really, I mean, then we're in big trouble, because
Right.
it can take years to get that back out of the soil before anything will grow normally.
Absolutely.
So it just isn't worth the risk for us. We will use it in small areas, in walkways and
Right.
and things like that. We've used them inside of the greenhouse, but it's just not worth taking that big of a gamble on our entire garden.
Absolutely. So what is our solution? You guys, this was a really hard decision for us because we've really enjoyed the Back to Eden style gardening. We had a lot of success in the Phoenix area, and we were really hoping that we could bring all of that knowledge here onto the homestead in the Missouri Ozarks. But what we have decided to do is to rake out all of the remaining straw. We're going to need to do an initial tilling of the soil to break things up, to get rid of the weeds. We're going to be laying down rabbit manure over the entire garden, and also amending with azomite.
Right.
After that, we have a solution that hopefully is going to work for us to keep the weeds at bay.
Right, so what we're going to be doing is using woven ground cover fabric on our rows. That will help keep the weeds under control, but it still allows for water and air, for everything to still circulate, for the ground to be able to get all the nutrients. We can still use compost tea to water the plants with. Fish emulsion, it'll be kind of a win-win, we're hoping. We're not going to know until at least this fall to know if our new plan is more of a success than our original plan. But we need to do what ultimately we think is best for our situation. Just like each of you needs to make a decision on your homestead, what you think is best for your situation. There's no one-size-fits-all way to homestead, and we hope as you watch our channel that you learn that just because something works really well for one person doesn't mean it's going to work really well for you. And it doesn't mean that you should feel guilty about having to do things in a different way. Maybe there's a YouTube channel that you watch that does something a certain way, and you just really kind of, really hope that that's going to work for you, and then it doesn't. You shouldn't feel bad about that. It's really a matter of experimenting and finding out what works for you. As you watch the Back to Eden documentary, the one thing I think that sometimes gets kind of lost in that is that, he's been working on that for, 30 years. And that what you're seeing is the end product of many, many years of work. It's very high importance for us to grow all of our own food here on the homestead, and we just don't have the time and we don't have the resources here to make that work.
Another reason why we're very hopeful with this new process that we're going to be implementing is it will allow us to easily expand our garden. As Kevin said, it's really important to us to really, honestly, grow as much of our own food as possible. That is really the #1 goal for us. We're not messing around. We're not kidding you. We want to grow as much as we can. And the garden space that we have right now is a great start, but we need to expand. Our plan also is to expand to a point where we grow more food than we need so that we can start selling that at the farmer's market and cut down some of the cost for us to grow our own food and make a little bit of that money back.
Again, we're not going to know if we're making the right decision until this growing season is over and we see if it ends up being more of a success than it was last year. But you guys, the bottom line is, do what works best for you and don't feel guilty if everything doesn't work the way that you hoped it did.
So you guys, we hope you enjoyed this video. We hope it gave you some encouragement or, you know, at least another perspective, another side of the homesteading story. If this is your first time stopping by our homestead, welcome. Thank you so much for stopping by. Right now is a perfect time for you to hit the subscribe button below so you can become a part of our homesteading community. If you enjoyed this video, please go ahead and share it with your family and friends. Don't forget that coming up, we are going to be at the Baker Creek Spring Planting Festival on May 6th and 7th.
Now we're going to be doing a giveaway. If you haven't checked out that video, go ahead and check that out, and we will be drawing that name after the festival.
So you guys, thanks so much for stopping by the homestead. Take care and God bless.
God bless.